Good morning, everybody. Welcome to October, believe it or not. I'd like to also welcome members of the public that are joining us in person and online, as well as the local media. I'd ask Mr. Beauchamp to take the roll call, please.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff Agar. Thank you. Nanny McEwen, alternate member to Gary Atkinson. Thank you. Councillor Bushi. Thank you. Councillor Bradley. Thank you. Councillor Broad.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Case.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hand.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor McRoberts.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sageman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bean.
Present.
Thank you. Deputy Warden White.
Present.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you very much. And I'd just let everyone know that Councillor McEwen was sworn in before the meeting started, so she is officially Plimpton, Wyoming's alternate. Welcome, Councillor McEwen. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. This time, I'd like to ask members of council to declare pecuniary interest now or where it may arise during the meeting. Seeing none at this time, I would ask for a motion to go in camera for the reasons noted in the agenda. Councillor Bushi and Councillor Ferguson seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Welcome back. I'd ask everybody to join me in silent reflection, please. Thank you. Item number 7, rise and report. I'd ask Mr. Beauchamp to do that, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I can report that County Council met in camera this morning for 35 minutes to approve the Lambton County Council closed session minutes dated September 6th of 2023, the Committee P.M. minutes dated September 20th of 2023, and the special joint meeting of the standing committees dated September 20th of 2023, to receive a report and provide input into the CAO's appointment and performance, to receive a report and provide instructions about the potential acquisition of property in the City of Sarnia, and to receive a report and provide instructions about a personnel matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, presentations. We have one presentation. Stephen Taylor, Chief Executive Officer, BT Engineering, would like to speak to Council regarding the intersection improvements at County Road 4 and County Road 31. The study has developed and evaluated alternatives for the roadway intersection and has determined the recommended plan, including property requirements to implement the project. Welcome, Mr. Taylor.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Steve Taylor, so I'm the CEO for BT Engineering, and welcome to be here today. Our company is experts in doing transportation planning. We do road projects across the province. We've done roundabouts and signalized intersections throughout Ontario. Last night we were doing a project in Picton for a second roundabout in Picton. Tomorrow we'll be doing a project for both a roundabout and a rotary interchange in Thunder Bay. So we do these types of projects across the province. And today I'm just going to describe a review of your intersection. So I'll give an overview of the assessment of alternatives and focus on our recommendations for council and then the next steps that will go from here. So the intersection that we're looking at was the intersection of County Road 31 and 4. It has a history of collisions and high severity collisions. And we've initiated as an environmental assessment under the provincial municipal class EA process to define a recommended plan, including any property that would be required to implement the recommendations. So the province has a prescribed process for completing environmental assessments. It's a sequential decision-making process for coming with a plan, looking at existing conditions, the need for solutions in an area. And at the end, there's documentation that documents the whole process available for the public. And it documents the inclusion of consultation with the public. So as I described, the problem with this current intersection has been long-term incidence of collisions. It is one that has a high level of fatal type collisions. It's unusual for it to be so high. So in the last 5 years, it was in the order of 15% of collisions involve fatalities. We've heard members of the public describe it as a long-term, for decades, situation with high severity collisions that have occurred in the area. The existing land uses around the intersection are 3 of the quadrants have built up environments, so farm, agriculture in the northeast quadrant, industrial in the southeast quadrant, a residential land use in tight, close proximity to the intersection, which is played into the recommendations in the southwest, and agricultural lands in the northwest. Some of the land uses in the area obstruct visibility for long sight distances for vehicles approaching the intersection, and has led to some of the contributing factors for people inadvertently entering the intersection and having sideswipe collisions with through vehicles. One of the issues as identified by the public and by the county staff members is that we have to accommodate oversized vehicles at this intersection. I'll come back to it, but that was one of the issues identified by the public and has been part of the technical review. So as part of the A process, we're mandated to look at alternative and document the sequential decision-making of what we selected. So these are the alternatives that we reviewed as part of the process. So the do nothing option, so leave it as it stands. It's mandated under Class A to be one of the benchmarks for comparison for alternatives. The second was all-way stop, which would provide stop control on all 4 approaches to the legs of the intersection. It hasn't been recommended to be carried forward, and I'll describe that in a second. Signalized intersection, which is typically the next order of magnitude that you would go to try to control movements. Typically, it's implemented for operational improvements because of delays to the intersection. It hasn't been recommended, and I'll come back to that in a second. And the fourth alternative was roundabout control, which is a ability to control both operations and safety at the intersection. And it has been recommended, and I'll come back on the next slide to describe the benefits and the rationale for why it was selected. So they all want to stop. Today, the intersection has oversized stop signs. If it was implemented, it wouldn't be a warranted type of control for the intersection. We wouldn't recommend it. It would lead to an increase in rear-end type collisions. And because the warrant for it is kind of a provincial mandated process, we typically don't like to recommend anything that's beyond warranted numbers and for design consistency throughout the province. So it would lead to increased collisions, less safe, not recommended, especially for the highest severity collisions that we've got at the intersection. The second alternative was the traffic signals. So again, it's one that the volumes that we got at the current intersection wouldn't warrant signals. So it would again lead to different types of collisions at the intersection. It would lead to people not obeying the intersections at off-peak hours. Traffic signals have warrants because they're effective for traffic operations. When you have lower volumes, we end up with people having large delays in off-peak periods, and they don't obey the signals. And we don't recommend them in locations that aren't warranted. There was a separate review of the signal warrant by an alternate firm before we took work on the project, and they also concluded that the signals weren't warranted. Based on our forecasted traffic demand, it would be 20 years or more before they start to reach the warrant. And they have been recommended not only because of the traffic operations, because of comparison of safety between it and the one that we have recommended, which is the roundabout control. So the comparison of the roundabout. So the roundabout is a traffic control device that's actually very effective for every hour of the year. Traffic signals are effective in the highest demand, so a few hundred hours a year. The roundabout provides both traffic operation and safety advantages for 8,000 hours of the year. It has a great track record of reducing fatal type collisions. As I said, I was in Picton last night. The first one we installed in Picton, over the first 7 years of its operation, didn't have a single reported collision. Because of low speeds of the vehicles that are going through the roundabouts, it's virtually impossible for anybody to have a high-speed collision. They just eliminate those types of fatalities. They also provide great traffic operations because what they do is they share the green time. It's like the most democratic way you can share available time and space in an intersection, so they work very well. Reducing speeds. It will have to accommodate oversized loads and farm equipment, large combines, and that is possible, and I've got a slide coming up to show that we've looked at that. This location, in the comparison between other alternatives, it was one that had moderately higher costs. It was in the same order of magnitude as the signals, and we did a separate design to show the the signal design and comparison so that we could do a cost comparison. And again, there were some comments that I'll talk about in a second from some of the property owners of needs to address access to their properties. But this location, the value of the collisions, we've done a paper that gave a range of costs of the collisions, which will equal the capital cost of that roundabout, range between $3 million and $27 million for a willingness to pay for the collision costs. It's just huge because it's dominated by the number of fatalities that you're getting here. It has a great business plan based on life cycle costs. We include the societal costs of collisions. We had a public consultation center locally. We had about 50 or 60 people that were in attendance. I think we had 60 people that registered and 24 comment sheets. I think I'd be fair if I said that most people that arrived at the public meeting came with suspicions about the recommendations for the roundabout. But by the time I spent the time in the evening, we answered questions for a long period of time to explain the rationale for why it's so effective in reducing collisions, why it will be so effective for providing slow speeds and good traffic operation. I think most of the people changed their mind before the end of the night. So in the end, we ended up about 50-50 with comments. We had 10 that were suggested another alternative or issues with the roundabout, and about 8 or about 50% were in favor of the roundabout, which was a good split. Some of the 10 were people that had site-specific issues with their properties right around the roundabout, and I'll describe what we've done for them. Comments about concerns about making sure we could accommodate heavy vehicles. So many of the 10 people were concerned that that just wouldn't work, and we've taken some more time to make sure it would work. And we did get one of the long-term residents in the area to describe that the fatalities had been going back to a period of 40 years. That was local knowledge that came forward at the public meeting. So it's not a near-term situation, it's been a long-term situation. So the recommended plan, so this is one of our roundabouts, it just shows it at night, but this shows the vehicle tracking for the oversized vehicles. So there's 2 movements, so they have to be able to go to and from the north to the west, and they have to be able to go straight through the roundabout from north-south. And if you take a look at the orientation of the center of the roundabout, it's actually been shifted to the east, and it's shifted to the east for 2 means. One, to get more space away from the residential property on the left or the west, and also to provide that straight-through movement for vehicles. So when an oversized vehicle has to travel through the roundabout, it'll be escorted by police. So it will go the wrong way for one of the directions, and that's okay, and that's done in roundabouts. So they have to go from the north to the west. They will travel on the outside of the roundabout in that northwest quadrant. And if they're traveling north-south, they will travel on the west side of the roundabout all the way through. So Mahmood is one of the specialty companies that does movements of large equipment vehicles. Actually, we're working with them. We're doing a project with 30 bridge lifts that they're involved with the lifting of rapid replacement of bridges. This is one of the recent projects they've done in Sarnia with the Shell equipment or reactor that was been moved. So they've run this equipment through our roundabout. It include a wider shoulder, and beyond the shoulder, in the project file we've mentioned it could also have a type of landscaping that it gives great flexibility for the driver to even go wider than the wide shoulder. So the recommended plan, this location is that we go with the roundabout design. It has some minor property impacts. It has excellent ability to control speeds and safety at the intersection. And we've made some changes to reduce some of the impacts. So the comments that we received, so if you take a look at the property owner in the bottom southwest quadrant, they had an issue with bringing a vehicle in and backing their trailer up to their works yard. We provide a mountable splitter island, and we provided a U-shaped driveway. We talked about this with them at the PCC. We changed the entrance for the commercial entrance back to where it is today. That was their main concern. And we provide a landscaping in the northeast quadrant because the work for the municipal drain and the property requirements, there's a specimen chestnut tree that would be required, so we've made a commitment for landscaping on their property. So where do we go for here? So what we typically do is we ask council for endorsement and instructions to go ahead and file for the 30-day public review period. We'll put that motion by council and any additions or comments that council wants to add to it as part of the project file. Gives us a complete documentation of the decision-making process, council's direction at the end of it. It would be based on the 30-day public review. Once it's through, you would have environmental clearance to proceed with the project. And the next domino would be property acquisition and negotiations for some of those commitments that the project file has given to those property owners. With that, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Questions? Councillor Agar.
Hi, thank you for the report. It was very well done. I was just at the open house in Corunna in the summer, and it seemed to me that, like, mostly everybody there was against a roundabout. They were fine with a traffic light. I just, like, I don't see up there how much property they have to buy from the neighborhood. And I'm just making a point here that, like I said, everybody I talked to weren't for this, and I'm just wondering how you got your numbers that you had 50-50 by the end of the night, because I didn't see it and I haven't heard about it. So thank you. Once again, thanks for the report. It's very good.
Mr. Taylor, please.
So I think you're right. As people walk, I would say that most of them were coming in with a perception that they want a traffic signals as the solution. I think by the time we worked through the answers, questions and answers, and some of the responses, most of the people that left had a change of opinion. Most of them came up to me at the end of the night and said that they had changed their mind by the time they left the building, which was fair. So, I mean, I described it as like a doctor giving advice to their patient. You know, I was giving advice to the county and the people from a professional perspective of why one solution was better than the other. And I think many people changed their mind by the time they left. Not all of them changed their mind, and the ones that had the greatest concerns were the ones that lived right around it. And this is part of the process to try to listen to what their issues were and make written commitments in the part of the project file for things that would go as part of the project, would have to be part of the project to address the issues that they had with their individual properties.
Councillor Case and then Councillor Dennis.
Through Mr. Warden to our presenter, and again, this is something probably you didn't get into when you did your study when it comes to traffic, but I am curious to know what we'd be looking at roughly when it comes to purchasing the properties around that area to be able to make this work. Again, I don't know if there's a process that's in place for what the county pays per acre or whatever the amount of land it would be. I guess I'm looking for some kind of an opinion on what we'd be looking at, if that's possible. That's my question, Mr. Warden.
Mr. Cole or Mr. Taylor, which one would like to handle? Oh.
The property process is that this plan, so it's got hatch lines for where property would be required. So as I described, we have shifted the roundabout to the east, so there's no property requirement off the residential lands. There's a commitment that we changed their driveway and give landscaping to them so that there's no land. So there's property required off the other three corners. So in the northwest, we have given a wider apron, 6 meter wide apron for the truck movement. That would be purchased at agricultural land prices. So if the county has pre-established rates for those, which often counties do, or they're updated for a new project, that would be agricultural lands. If there isn't, it would be typically appraisal done on agricultural land to establish the price. And on the other two quadrants, again, there's commercial land, and if there isn't a county rate for commercial land, it would be done by an advanced appraisal. And there's slipper widenings around. And again, in the northeast quadrant, it's kind of combined land for both the project for the roundabout as well as the township was already committed to doing changes for the municipal drain. So there might be a combined cost sharing on that quadrant. But typically the lands are a very small price compared to the project costs. And the only other thing I was going to say, that the sequence for acquiring land, we do this with municipalities and MTO too, is that typically the municipality would do the appraisal for giving the initial offer. If one of the landowners thought that it wasn't the right value, typically the municipality will pay to let them do their own separate appraisal, and then you'll negotiate between the two. But if there can't be a common ground, and this happens in less than 1% of all property acquisitions the province do, it would then go to an expropriation process. It wouldn't, the expropriation process doesn't give them the right to not sell. It just is a process to define what the value is, and then you're bound by the value. But because you've done the environmental assessment and the project file, you've created the documentation if you ended up having to go to hearing necessity to document the need, the reason for why you had to take the land. So it's just, it can take between 12 and 16 months if you have to expropriate. But like I said, 99% of property acquisitions are all done by willing sellers, in my experience.
Follow up, Councillor Case.
Any idea on the cost, what the cost would be for those property improvements that would have to be made, such as changing laneways and that type of thing? Any idea on that?
Through the warden, I think every one of the three quadrants, this is something that's under $10,000. This is landscaping or driveway improvements.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Following up on Councillor Agar's remarks, in the report here, it said that actually almost 60% of the respondents were against a roundabout. What's the point of asking citizens their opinions if we don't follow what their wishes are? Like, what's the point of asking people what their opinions are if we just disregard it? Are consultants and bureaucrats enlightened, that much more enlightened and smarter than the citizens? What's the point?
Okay, Mr. Taylor, please.
It's a courtesy to the public, and it's mandated by legislation that we have to consult and explain the rationale for technical decisions. So, no, but I'll just continue. So the comments that they've given, so some of them were questions where they didn't understand the rationale, and some of them we're working on responses to them. Some of the responses were given at the night of the meeting, and some of them were legitimate concerns for individual properties that they've identified an issue that they would like addressed. So part of the process is a two-way exchange of information, one giving them technical advice, because many of these people are lay people that have never made this type of decisions. And the other way, the exchange of information is things that they know about for their personal perspectives and operations on their property that we need to accommodate. So one way information is explaining why the technical information is something that they didn't understand, and we're subject area experts in this. Some of the decisions aren't made by decisions around a table at the Tim Hortons. Some of these things are very technical and they don't understand. So, and about 10%. That's it. Yep. And then what happens is the traffic signals have higher life cycle costs for operation of the electricity and the equipment over the life of their use. So the delta isn't big.
Deputy Warden White.
Thank you. And I think we've dealt with some of this at the city level as well, as we've sort of lagged behind other municipalities in moving towards roundabouts, and we've now sort of crossed this bridge a little bit at the City of Sarnia. Perhaps maybe just elaborate a little bit more. I mean, bullet points are great in this report, and I'm sure you face this every time you have a public meeting, but to the points that were raised, perhaps you can just elaborate a little bit more on the data that supports a roundabout versus all-way stops and traffic signals, and how you explained earlier, one example that there were 0 fatalities at this one roundabout in 7 years versus what you might experience with traffic signals and all-way stops. Because it's not all about money for me. I'd rather save a life, and perhaps if you can help us understand the difference at that level, then I think it might be a little easier to digest.
Mr. Taylor, please.
To the warden. So part of the decision is based on the collision experience. So the roundabouts virtually eliminate the fatal type collisions. They can have the lower severity collisions, but they're low speed. And what we do from a statistical perspective, most jurisdictions give a societal cost of what collisions cost. So fatality can be more than $1 million in value. So you've ended up with a fatality in the last 5 years. So each individual fatality has a cost to the individual, and it also has a cost to society. So I gave that big range of future costs of collisions is more than the capital cost of the project. The all-way stops and the signals, they're meant to help with traffic operations. They don't do as well for traffic safety. So they'll continue to have collisions, high risk of severity collisions. And at these volumes, this is the right solution. It'll operate safely for every hour of the year. And hopefully I come back in 7 years and you can report that you haven't had a reported collision at this location.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Taylor. I'd look for any motions. Councillor Cook, please.
So you'd like to refer this to budget for 2024, please?
Okay, seconded by Deputy Warden White. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks again. Item number 9, minutes of open session of Lambton County Council of September the 6th. Motion to adopt these minutes. Councillor Sageman, Deputy Warden White seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 10, correspondence to receive and file. We have 3 items here. How would you like to deal with these? Adopt all 3. Councillor Miller and Councillor Veen. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 11, Board of Health. Dr. Duick, please. And correspondence to receive and file, there are 4 items. Councillor Agar moves to receive and Councillor Veen seconds. All in favor of that? That's carried. Information reports, there's 4 as well. Motion to adopt these, Councillor Sageman and Councillor Cook. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Dr. Duick. Oh, sorry. Deputy Warden White.
Thank you. Might as well make it worth your trip down the aisle. Could you please provide an oral update on the establishment of a plan for warming centers for this coming winter season, please?
Thank you. Through you, Warden. I would like to call on our Manager of Health Protection, Chad Eichert, to explain the protocol for cooling and warming centers from the province.
Thank you. Through you, Warden Marriott. Yeah, so as far as our warming centers, so we have been in touch with the organizations that have offered to be cooling centers to see if they would be willing to also operate as warming centers. this winter. And we did a survey and have heard back from most of them, and all have expressed interest in providing warming center options as well. So the warming centers will operate similar to cooling centers in that they're more for short-term stays, where somebody can go just briefly to, a short period of time to seek shelter and warmth. And then those that are looking for more of a longer term stay, who require overnight stays, they would be directed to one of the shelters.
Follow up, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. So will, two questions then, will this information then be pushed out to the public? If so, when? And what supports then, to your point, Mr. Eichert, about being directed to other facilities, what support will be on site and available to those who are seeking warmth during the winter?
Mr. Eichert, please.
Yes, thank you through you, Warden Marriott. Yeah, so as far as communicating to the public, we will be updating our website with all that information. We meet regularly with our extreme temperature stakeholder group that has a lot of community members that work with vulnerable populations and are part of this the cooling and warming center protocols. And then as far as the what is offered at the warming centers, it's very similar to the cooling centers. There's no expectation that they have to provide any other services at the warming centers. Now, if an individual requires longer term stay and would go to the shelter, obviously they would be offered the services provided by the shelter.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we have, Councillor Bradley.
The only other question is the hours of operation. That has been an issue. Hours that will service the public. And that has been an issue on the mental health team. And I believe that was going to be followed up on, okay, to look at how we can make them more user-friendly.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Eichert, please.
Yes, and we're going to, the extreme temperature stakeholder group, they meet again in November. So we were going to bring that up when they meet with that group again. I know that is often discussed in terms of cooling center hours of operation. Most of these organizations, like they're only expected to offer their location during their normal business hours. So there are some locations that do offer extended hours or weekend hours. But yeah, the group is going to have a look at that, and we'll sort of see what our coverage looks like.
So will you be back to us before we get to the winter months?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. We have one other item under Board of Health. Item C, it's a report requiring a motion. Report dated October the 4th, 2023, regarding update on province's new plan to strengthen public health and implications for Lambton public health. Councillor Miller move and Councillor Sageman seconds. Any discussion? Councillor Bradley.
Perhaps the clerk can help me out. I believe when this all occurred back before COVID, I did talk to the Premier at one point about his plans. We invited the MPPs for the area to come and meet with us. And it's sort of like that play Waiting for Godot. It's been now 3 or 4 years, and I realize there's been a change with the one MPP. But I really think it's important that we express directly to them, and not maybe just the MPP in Sarnia and Lambton now, some around here, about the impact of this regionalization. Because I think it's back on the table big time to reduce the number of health units down to, in our case, it was from 10 to 1. And all of you that have been in this chamber know in the past, we've always lost out on those type of directions. So I think we need to be strong and proactive and ask the MPP to attend here to talk about the issue that we raised years ago for a discussion with council. Is that meeting still out there someplace?
Yeah, they had committed to coming to either this meeting or November, and then the change happened. So I can follow up if just one wants to. I believe Minister McNaughton or MPP McNaughton has a bit of time, but not much longer. So I can reach out to MPP Bailey and see if he would come by himself if we don't have anybody else for the other position.
Yeah, I think it needs to be clear. This isn't confrontational. This is simply want to have that dialogue to go straight back to Queen's Park now, not to let this grow like it did before.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Warden. I think we're all glad to see the 75-25 come back. Well, with a 1% increase per year in the way inflation looks, on the operational increases, have we got to find efficiencies or do cutbacks later on? I think it's just kind of an open question, like I thought for everybody. That 1% will not cover increases ongoing. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if Mr. Pilarchio or Mr. Taylor would like to handle that. Please, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, through you, Warden Marriott. No, and thank you for the question. As the report talks about, the last few reports we've written to County Council was a view that we needed the province to go back to its traditional funding level. So that is good news that they've retained the 75-25% ratio starting in January. But the other challenge is that we know we're going to receive 1% over the next 3 years. And absolutely, like other health units, we'll be under pressure to satisfy our mandate inside that restrictive funding envelope. So at this time, we've reprioritized some of our work. We won't be able to do everything that we do, but we'll be bringing a report to County Council as well in November with more of a plan of how we intend to balance and bring forward a proposed 2024 budget.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion? Anybody opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 12, Infrastructure and Development Services. We have a report dated October 4th, 2023 regarding County Road 4 Intersection Improvement Study, Schedule B Environmental Assessment Study. Motion for this report, Councillor Veen and Councillor Sageman. Any discussion? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I have a question regarding section 27A of the task force recommendations as outlined on page 94 of our package. It indicates that the right to appeal any project that meets certain criteria would be removed. Can staff please confirm?
Sorry, Councillor Dennis, we're not really on that one at this point.
The next one, my apologies. I'll ask then, please. Thank you.
I'll call the question on that motion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And number 12A-B, report dated October the 4th regarding Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force. Do we have a motion? Deputy Warden White, Councillor Field, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question regarding section 27A of the task force recommendations as outlined on page 94 of our package. It indicates that the right to appeal any project that meets certain criteria would be removed. Can staff please confirm my interpretation that this does indeed remove the opportunity to appeal? That is, that the public or the community would no longer have the right to state their case and legally challenge a decision in this regard. I do find this very troubling, but wanted to confirm that the public's right to appeal will be removed under this recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Cole, would you be able to handle that?
For that question today, through you, Mr. Warden, I'll just maybe ask for Ken Melanston, our Manager of Planning, to see if he has any direct information on that specific recommendation beyond what was just included in the task force recommendation.
Mr. Melanston, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I'm sorry, Councillor, could you refer me to the page that you're referring to in the task force report?
27A of the task force recommendations as outlined on page 94 of our package.
So through you, Warden Marriott, to the counselor, this is still, so one of the things that we did in preparing this report was review what actually has been implemented by the province so far versus what has not. So this has not been implemented at this point. It is still very much a recommendation.
Okay, any other questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried as well. And 12B, Social Services Division, we have a report dated October the 4th, 2023 regarding additional dwelling unit incentive program. Motion to Councillor Bradley moves, seconded by Councillor Miller. Any discussion? Councillor Bradley.
How will this be coordinated with the lower tier? Or is the lower tier expected to do its own program?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden Marriott, to Councillor Bradley. Certainly the lower tier is welcome to do a complementary program as Simcoe and Collingwood is doing, but there's no expectation. In order to coordinate it, you're right, we would have to work with the lower tier on approving the building plans, but there's no expectation that at this time the lower tier contributes any funding.
Councillor Agar, please.
Just a question similar to Mayor Bradley. Is each municipality, is it like a blanket that you follow this, or can we adopt our own rules to it for approving, like a suite in the backyard?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden Marriott. So at this time, we're following the Provincial Ontario Renovates program. We would need to consult with the lower tier to make sure, of course, it meets with all your zoning and planning, but we would be following the Ontario Renovates programming. And again, you could augment that if you wanted to with additional dollars.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 13, committee minutes. I'd call on Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Warden. We met on September 20th, AM committee, and I present these minutes for council's approval.
Okay, under Infrastructure and Development Services, correspondence to receive and file was motion number 1. And under the same section, information report dated September the 20th regarding emergency management was motion number 2. Reports requiring a motion was motion number 3. And under Public Health Services, Emergency Medical Services Department information report was motion number 4. And under Cultural Service Division, reports requiring a motion, report regarding naming a request for Lambton Shared Services Center meeting space, that was motion number 5. And motion number 6 was a report dated September the 20th regarding building security and employee safety at Sarnia Library. And motion number 7 was a report dated September the 20th regarding library policy manual. Motion number 8 was a report regarding museums, gallery, and archives collection. And under corporate services, motion number 9 was dealing with report regarding strategic plan review and update. And adjournment was number 10. Councillor Bean, please.
Thank you, Warden. I move these minutes as presented.
Seconded by Councillor Agar. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And item B is a special joint meeting of the Standing Committee minutes dated September the 20th. Motion to receive these, Councillor Cook and Deputy Warden White. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item number C, Committee PM minutes from September the 20th. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Thank you, Warden. I'd like to present the September 20th, 2023 PM committee minutes to Lambton County Council.
Thank you. Motion number 1 was under Long-Term Care Division, correspondence to receive and file. And motion number 2 was an information report dated September the 20th regarding master plan and master proposed Lambton Meadowview Villa redevelopment. Motion number 3 was report requiring a motion regarding small house functional program and master plan. And motion number 4 was under Corporate Services Division, report dated September the 20th regarding strategic plan review and update. And motion number 5 was under Finance Facilities and Court Services, report dated September the 20th regarding court services, stats, and activity. And number 6, 7, and 8 were in camera. And number 9 was adjournment. Councillor Ferguson, please.
I'd like to move these minutes as presented.
Seconder, Councillor Dennis. All in favor? That's carried. We have under 14, we have no items tabled from previous meetings. Number 15, notice of motion. None at this time as well. Item number 16, other business. I have 2 here. First, you'll note under number 22, notes in recognition of the Ontario Public Library Week. October is Canadian Library Month. In October, libraries and library partners across Canada raise awareness of libraries' value, role in the lives of people in Canada. From October 16th to 20th, libraries across the province will celebrate Ontario Public Library Week. There will be in our front lobby from up until 1 p.m. today to talk about all the free services involved. And the other part I wanted to mention was the housing tour. On October 25th, you've received that by email. RSVP is by this Friday, October the 6th. Still looking for more participants. Any other business? Councillor Case, please.
Yes, Mr. Warden, through you. I'd just like to publicly acknowledge and thank MPP Monty McNaughton for his many years of service. It was truly nice to have somebody in government that was actually a cabinet minister and part of cabinet, and we're really going to miss him. So I just wanted to acknowledge his years of service and thank him for his cooperation over the many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you make it a resolution, so it's a resolution of County Council?
I'd be more than happy to do that. I'd be more than happy to do that, Mayor Bradley, so I will make that a resolution, sir.
Okay, Councillor Bradley seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any other business? Seeing none, we move to item number 17, notice of bylaws. Mr. Beauchamp, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. It is moved by Councillor Veen and seconded by Councillor Miller that bylaw number 17 of 2023 as circulated be taken as being read a first and a second time.
All those in favor? That's carried.
It is moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Councillor Veen that bylaw number 17 of 2023 as circulated as being read a third and final time.
All those in favor? That's carried as well. Thank you. This time, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Next meeting will be November the 1st, with in-camera set to start at 9 a.m. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Sageman and Councillor Bean, all in favor. It's carried. Please join me for O Canada.
With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the June of strong and free. From far and wide, O